Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Sam Gabriel here, and welcome to part 2 of What If Deku Was in 1B. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat, so we begin. Monoma's flying fist slammed into Izuku's face, knuckles making contact on cheekbones with a thud as the greenette found himself tensing in pain. His skin was agitated as it rapidly turned red, and Izuku rubbed the pain that seared across his cheek and nose. The momentum of the fist had been enough to send a bolt of shock up Izuku's body, and the greenette closed his eyes to steady himself. Monoma took advantage of the situation and sent a storm of small body parts flying in at random angles, each using its momentum to increase the blow's force. Monoma made use of the random patterns to create a blind spot, and that made his main body fly away as Izuku could only stand there and take the hits. As much as he wanted to, Izuku knew he couldn't use One for All in his current situation, because even if a punch were all that he needed to save himself, the wind pressure would break the building and Izuku was considering collateral damage. Suddenly, the assault stopped, and Izuku looked up to scan the situation, only to find that Monoma was gone. He knew another attack would be coming soon, seeing that there was about a single minute left with Monoma's quirk usage time. I'll just let him come to me, Izuku thought as he braced himself for anything, standing in a cleared area to avoid surprise attacks. A small thud caught his attention, and Izuku instinctively dodged the oncoming fist, noticing how it had a silver glint to it as it whizzed past his face. Tetsu's quirk? He asked, grabbing the fist that flew by his left side and lunged forward to use Monoma's momentum against him. This quirk move was just simple martial arts skills Izuku had learned from observing Bakugo as he threw Monoma over his shoulder and onto the floor with a heavy thud. Monoma groaned but got up as Tetsu's steel quirk had saved him from breaking anything. But before Izuku could process any more, another assault came and the two violently spun in a dance, where Izuku just tried his best not to get hit. A few more seconds later, their movement ceased as Monoma jumped backwards. Izuku also took a step back to observe and watched as Monoma's face went from pissed to calm as he looked at the watches on his costume. Time. He then touched his earpiece with an annoyed expression. Shiozaki, could I have some backup? Hello? Realizing he still didn't have information on Shiozaki's vine quirk, Izuku leapt forward, but before he could go and knock Monoma out, his earpiece crackled. Tokage? He asked, stopping in his tracks. Roof? Underestimate vines! Before Tokage could explain, the door crashed to the ground and both boys turned to see the sound source. Horror filled their minds as the room suddenly filled with vines, twisting in endless waves that flew towards them, wrapping around anything and everything in its way. Monoma ran to the other side of the room as Izuku's mind kicked into high speeds, and he tried to analyze the situation as quickly as possible. Last time I punched using One for All, I destroyed the whole robot and there was enough wind pressure to knock the entire thing back. If I tried it here, it would damage the building. But how else would I destroy the vines? Izuku, think. How do I not demolish the building but still use One for All? Izuku could hear a shriek and turns to see that Monoma was being attacked by the vines too. Despite being on Shiozaki's team, the blonde was being swallowed up and cocooned like everything else as Izuku kept trying just to dodge. It was getting difficult as the vines were filling in all the nooks and crannies. Next thing the greenette knew, a massive wave of vines attacked him. Ah! He yelled out as he grabbed the vine and an idea screamed in his mind. Using 100% of One for All in only the tip of his finger, Izuku leaned forward and gently pushed against the vines, letting only a small part make contact. A massive wind pressure tore through the vines and threw them across the room as Izuku let out a small grunt, teeth clenching as he made a fist, hiding the pain of his broken index knuckle. The wind was enough to not only burst open his vine coffin, but clear the room temporarily and give the greenette a moment to think. However, before he could further strategize, the match was over as another tsunami wave of vines came crashing in. Crucifixion! The cry Izuku heard was almost saintly, echoing through the eerily silent halls as All Might announced the villain team had won. It took a while, but after escaping the vines of hair that held him captive, Izuku met up again with Tokage, who said she was in a similar situation. Wow, we really underestimated Shiozaki's quirk. Tokage sighed and she stretched her body. Oh, I thought you'd like to know that her hero costume doesn't just look like a white tunic. It literally is just a tunic. Izuku nodded, wearing an expression that showed he was expecting what he heard. I'm no longer surprised. She seems to be able to rely solely on her quirk and wouldn't need that much protection. Tokage sighed before grinning. The two chatted a little more before noticing a familiar blonde ahead of them. Turning to face each other, Tokage and Izuku nodded before smiling and running to join Monoma. That was a good fight. Izuku smiled, and even though his team won, Monoma shook his head. No, it would have been better if I'd thought it out. Your strategy wasn't too bad either. Both greenettes nodded as Monoma gave his thoughts on Izuku's plan. You do need to consider all possibilities, though. Even if you sent Tokage to gather intel, it was a rookie move to gather information while pulling off a plan. Stick to just one at a time next time. I didn't even notice you borrow my quirk, Tokage exclaimed, and Monoma just shook his head. I'm not strong, but I can be sneaky. Tell me about it. Tokage laughed as the topic of conversation changed to Izuku's quirk. Wow, Deku. For someone who says he's a late bloomer with no control, you sure are powerful. Monoma agreed with Tokage before nodding towards Izuku. A strong quirk and a smart brain. Quite the powerful combination, but we need a rematch where we fight strategies. Absolutely. Izuku nodded and thanked Monoma again as the three of them reached the rest of the class to see Shiozaki already there. What caught Izuku off guard in surprise was that Bakugo also sat there with a pissed-off look. His presence annoyed Monoma, though, and the 1B blonde was about to go off the rails when Izuku gave a sharp nudge to his ribs. All Might is about to talk. Monoma unwillingly calmed down to face their teacher, who was giving them their feedback.
As we do with all matches, it's time to declare the MVP. And the MVP for this match is young Midoriya.
Huh? But we lost. Izuku was confused as he looked up at the teacher, who explained his choice.
Well, young Shiozaki here was unwilling to cooperate with young Monoma. An extremely foolish decision if made in a real-life scenario. A fight with a good strategist on either side never has a clear outcome because the tides of battle could change within a second. Team D was lucky to win through pure strength.
He smiled at Shiozaki, who was looking over his words.
You may be powerful, but relying on others is important too. A team of weaker heroes is fully capable of taking down a stronger villain.
The critique finished, and Shiozaki nodded as All Might turns to Monoma.
I'm sure you know already, young Monoma, that you let your annoyance at your teammate get in the way.
Monoma nodded as he already knew his flaws from self-analysis as the hero turns to Team A.
It was a tough decision between young Tokage and young Midoriya for MVP.
He started, but then turns to Tokage with a slightly raised eyebrow.
But in battle, let's not flirt with a teammate while trying to strategize.
Tokage stilled and let out an awkward laugh. Her usually overconfident stance was a little shaken. Oops, sorry about that. But his name Deku really does sound like you can do it. A couple of others in class nodded, and Izuku let out a meek smile before covering his face out of embarrassment. With Izuku announced as the MVP, All Might gave the next villain pair their 5-minute head start, and Izuku turns to see Bakugo storming out. All Might, sir, he called before pointing at Bakugo. Can I talk to him really quickly? All Might wanted to say no, but sighed as he gave his successor permission, and Izuku ran out. By the time he caught up, Bakugo was about to leave the school gates. Kachin! The ash blonde stopped, but didn't face him, making Izuku stare at his back. It was a sight that gave the greenette nostalgia and a sense of determination to chase and surpass. What do you want, you damned nerd? His voice was rough and filled with so much agitation that Izuku had to pause. Wait, I just wanted to ask. He caught his breath as he looked at Bakugo. Why were you in my class? Bakugo still didn't turn around as he spoke back, voice a little calmer. I was just observing you, damn. We both know that's not true. Bakugo finally turned around and Izuku was shocked. The expression his childhood friend wore was one not only pissed, but contained pain, too. He yelled, suddenly lashing out, and he screamed at Izuku with all he had.
How did you, out of everyone, suddenly getting a quirk?
He snarled at the greenette, who was frozen on the steps, unsure how to react to the situation.
I was the one who won my goddamn match, but I still didn't get the stupid MVP!
Izuku just stared blankly at Bakugo as he listened.
And that goddamn Icy Hot won his whole match, alone, because we only have 19! Why?
He cursed and yelled as he turned back around, ready to stomp out of the school as Izuku looked at his bully's back again. Instinctively, he knew something wasn't right as he ran forward and with an outstretched hands toward Bakugo, he yelled,
Kachan! What?
Bakugo almost roared out as he glared into Izuku's eyes.
What is it, Deku? What do you want to say? Spit it out! Kachan, Stop looking down on me! How did you get your quirk? You didn't even use it and you got MVP!
Kachan, listen!
You are not better than me, damn it! Kachan!
Izuku had enough as he stormed forward and went right to Bakugo's face. Kachan, my quirk is borrowed! The yelling stopped as Bakugo looked at Izuku in confusion. Izuku knew All Might told him to keep it a secret, but Bakugo wasn't someone he could hide things from. I can't tell you the details, he started, trying not to stutter as he chose his words carefully. But it was someone else who said I had potential. Izuku then took a deep breath before turning to look directly at Bakugo. I will make this quirk my own, and I will become the #1 hero. He raised a small fist at the ash blonde. and I will rescue everybody with a smile. Bakugo was still in shock at the information Izuku had given him, but snapped out of it when the greenette mentioned number 1's position. His gaze returned to the mildly annoyed one that he always wore before turning around and leaving. Izuku could no longer do anything as the blonde suddenly stopped. Without turning around, Bakugo's rough voice was a lot less violent as he walked off. I will be number 1, you stupid weakling. The matter was settled, and Izuku returns to class to make notes on everybody else. Everybody had given it their all, and some stood out more than others. Nirengeki Shoda stood out as being the most leveled with his powerful quirk, twin impact, and cooperation with his teammate. This led to a great fight as Shoda quickly overwhelmed his opponents with a combination of strength and skill. The chubby boy was extremely humbled too as he politely declined the admiration of how his teamwork was perfect. And the other team who stood out was Team E, composed of Kinoko Komori and Fukidashi Manga. Komori didn't stand out in the class with her gloomy expressions and unseen face. Still, she flipped her opinion as the whole class were greeted by a brand new person as her personality suddenly switched into the most social butterfly they'd ever met. She was strong alone, but with her partner being Manga, they were a power combo. From Manga activating his quirk, Comic, he materialized the onomatopoeia, and the building was quickly transformed into a humid incubator as they sat together with the bomb on the 5th floor. On their way up, Komori had been dancing as she struck poses like an idol. Spores emitted from her body, and by the time Kojiro Bondo and Tetsu Tetsu, who was the hero team, arrived, a dark, damp, stuffy building met them. They really had no chance, as the second they stepped inside, Komori sang out, "Grow, grow, grow! We'll charm the world with my mushrooms!" Instantly, mushrooms sprouted from everywhere, and the humidity caused them to spread even to places where Komori didn't have her spores. The heroes were immediately covered and immobilized, as even if Tetsu Tetsu could move with his steel, there were spores in his lungs and he fell to the floor gasping for air. With the last match finished and a few sent to Recovery Girl's office, the day was finally over.
Listen up, guys. We have an important decision to make.
The class turns to watch their homeroom teacher walk through the 1B door with a grin, and they gave their morning greetings.
As you know, we need to have a class representative, deputy, and a few others to help lead and structure the class.
There was a buzz of excitement that started to fly around as Vlad let out a toothy smile and settled them down.
Okay, so this is what we'll do. We'll go around and everyone will give reasons for why they should be class rep. You all saw each other's physical power yesterday, so now you have to show off your other capabilities. Small uses of your quirk are permitted in the case yesterday wasn't enough.
The class nodded as the teacher explained a system for them.
Then we'll have a vote by raising your hand, and the most votes will be rep. If you want to show support for someone else, put in your input after their speech.
Senkai Bara was the first to make an impactful speech after the first few students who showed off their quirks a little as they spoke. His whole demeanor was a little overwhelming as he spoke and his hands spun like drills. Good-looking dude. Yeah, he's pretty hot. Izuku heard a few girls whisper to each other, and he remembered how Kaibara had also won his match the day prior. The problem was that he ended up winning almost alone as he just went in and took his opponents out with Reiko Yanagi, his partner, following quietly along. He was strong, but also a buzzkill, as he always stated things from a factual standpoint. The class respected him even though he wasn't the easiest to get along with. Shiozaki was the next to have a memorable speech, but for the wrong reasons, as she called everyone in the class a sinner. Her words were just as condescending as before, stating to everyone that she should be the class rep because she needed to guide them in the correct direction. Vlad sighed at this. Shiozaki had glanced at her classmates at least, but her attitude hadn't changed. It seemed that even a speech from All Might wasn't enough. Someone who did get an overall positive reaction, however, was Jirota Shishida. He was a polite, well-built boy in glasses with similar teeth to Vlad, as he resembled a humanoid beast. His quirk was called Beast, and the class had seen him in battle as he ran forward with a roar. He had a way with words and had received small applause as he sat down for other students to give their talks. Shishida was definitely someone smart, but the downside was, when he activated his quirk, he would lose his rationality and blindly run forward in an animalistic manner, almost savagely plowing ahead. Another person who was positively met was Shoda. He had already shown that he was mighty with his twin impact, and he was very level-headed. His humble nature was easy to get along with, even though it didn't make him stand out. He always hung around the back of the class in terms of sticking out, but was someone who acted as the class's conscience. As he sat down, Shoda received a few shouts telling him to be more confident, and the boy only shook his head with a smile. A few others went, and the atmosphere was relatively peaceful until it was Tokage's turn. The class automatically liked her. She was confident, talkative, provocative, and even though Izuku had the lead during the plan, her personality made the others look at her for leadership. She received a lot of support, and compared to her, although Juzo Hononuki was next with a good speech about hating to lose, it wasn't as impactful as Tokage's. He ended up being overshadowed by her, despite being a good candidate himself. One of the biggest surprises, however, was Monoma's speech. 1B recognized him as the best strategist in class, and even with his arrogant personality, Monoma was someone they liked because he could put anything aside for victory. Plus, how he stood up to Bakugo for Izuku was just further reasons for them to come to like the blonde. What took them by surprise was that even though he had wanted to stand out, Monoma shook his head at the opportunity. I lose control of my emotions far too easily. I may be a good strategist, but unlike Midoriya, I cannot keep calm when provoked. If anyone, it should be him. Izuku looked at Monoma in shock, but stood up as he was next, and nervously looked around the room. I'm not sure of what I did to deserve that praise, but I'll try my best. He looked forward at Monoma, giving him a bit of a glare, and he gulped before taking a deep breath. Monoma has faith in me, then I'll have faith in myself, Izuku thought to himself, before letting out his best smile. I believe in everyone. If I'm the class rep, I want to create a class where everyone can rely on everyone so that we can save the day. We will be just like All Might and go forward. Even though he stuttered at first, Izuku's desire to win increased and started to outweigh his desire to save. He wore his smile in more confidence, and it became more of a determined grin by the time he finished. His hand had unconsciously made a fist and rose toward the ceiling as he finished his speech. Plus Ultra! Tokage joined in at the end with a happy chant that everyone copied as her actions were contagious. You can do it, Deku! You can do it, Deku! You can do it, Deku! Adrenaline rushed through Izuku as he let the cheers die down and sat in his seat. He was smiling brightly still when the last few students had their turn, and it was finally time for voting. Unsurprisingly, the two with the most positive responses won, as Izuku stood as class rep and Tokage as deputy. But the adrenaline rushing through Izuku's veins had come to an end, and he returns to being a stuttering greenette who bowed at the opportunity. Tokage gave him a pat on the back and a confident grin, telling him that he'd do fine before thanking the class herself. The day passed, and when lunchtime came around, Izuku found himself eating lunch while questioning the others on why they would choose him. As I said, you don't lose your head as quickly as I do in battle, and you're a good strategist. You have the power to back up your talk, too, albeit that you're not in complete control, Monoma simply stated as Tokage and Owase nodded in agreement. But I still think Tokage would be a better head than me. Shouldn't we swap places because I stutter in every other situation? Tokage just kept smiling and shook her head. Yeah, but I still think you're pretty cool. They smiled confidently at Izuku, who returned it with his own happy smile, but just as they did, an alarm tore through the school, catching everyone off guard as it sent shivers down spines. A panic immediately broke loose, and waves of students started running for the doors as Izuku asked a nearby older student what was going on. The older guy just yelled as he freaked out, "It's a third-level security breach!" What do you mean? Is it a fire? No, I don't know. This hasn't happened in years. What if it's a villain? Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer for this video, as well as the editor for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out, mortals. Have a fantastic day.